If you want to achieve what others call impossible, the first thing you have to understand is that your thinking has to be different, completely different, not slightly adjusted, not incrementally improved, but fundamentally, radically different from the people around you. You have to divorce yourself from the way the masses think. You have to rise above the common current that carries most people from one unremarkable year to the next. Because what most people call realistic, I call resigned. What most people call safe, I call a quiet form of spiritual bankruptcy. Greatness does not emerge from caution. It never has. It comes from absolute clarity of purpose, backed by a will so fierce, so unrelenting, so precisely directed that the universe itself has no choice but to yield to it. The man who achieves the impossible is not reckless. Understand that. He is relentless. He is not lucky. He is locked in. He does not wake up asking for ease. He demands alignment, total and uncompromising alignment between his thoughts, his beliefs, and his behavior. And when that alignment exists, when those three things are moving in the same direction, with the same intensity, he begins to produce results that most people never even allow themselves to imagine. I know this because I lived it. Every championship, every fourth quarter, every moment where I was asked to deliver something that seemed beyond reach. It was not physical. It was mental first. Always mental first. Let me tell you something plainly. All achievement begins with thought, not effort, not opportunity, not talent. Thought, and not casual thought, not the kind of wandering, undisciplined mental drifting that most people engage in from the moment they wake up to the moment they close their eyes. I'm talking about organized, directed, emotionally charged, relentlessly repeated thought. This is where men fail at the most fundamental level. They allow their thoughts to go wherever the wind takes them. They absorb the beliefs of the people around them without questioning whether those beliefs deserve space in their mind. They think like spectators in a stadium, observers of someone else's game rather than the architects of their own destiny. And if you do not control your thinking, you do not control your life. That is not an opinion, that is law. To think with real power, you must become ruthless about what you allow inside your mind. Absolutely ruthless. You must treat your mind the way I treated the gym, as sacred ground where only what serves the mission is permitted entry, because every thought is a seed. And if you are planting doubt in that sacred soil, if you are planting fear, if you are planting weakness disguised as common sense, do not be surprised when what grows is bitter and small and far beneath what you are capable of. But if you choose to plant belief, if you plant a vision so clear it feels physical, if you plant clarity of desire and the absolute refusal to quit, then impossibility itself begins to dissolve, not metaphorically, literally. The obstacles that once looked permanent begin to reveal the paths around them that were always there waiting for a mind clear enough to see them. The only limit that truly binds a man is the limit of his own belief. I have seen people rise from nothing, from less than nothing, simply because they believed it was possible and acted accordingly. And I have seen people with every external advantage, the education, the money, the connections, the raw talent, fail entirely because they accepted the lie that their dream was beyond their reach. Do not let the world decide what is within your reach. That is your decision and only yours. Let the world call it impossible. That is their right. But it is not your reality, because the moment you take hold of an idea with total belief, the moment you marry that idea to a definiteness of purpose, so clear it feels carved into your bones, and nourish it with faith and protect it with daily discipline, you begin to awaken forces within yourself and around you that the average person will never access because they never committed deeply enough to feel them activate. Most men look at the world through the lens of limitation. They look at something that has not been done before and they stop right there. That sentence becomes their ceiling. But the man who is built to achieve the impossible looks at exactly the same information and arrives at a completely different conclusion. He says, then I will be the first. And in that single shift, everything changes. He is no longer operating by the existing rules of the world. He is writing new ones, drawn entirely from the vision he holds inside himself. Because the power to think is not simply the power to analyze what already exists. It is the power to build what does not. The mind is the only instrument capable of taking what is invisible and transforming it into something real, into results, into empires, into legacies that outlive the man who built them. But that power must be directed with precision. It must be governed. It must be trained the way I train my body, through repetition, through resistance, through the discipline to do it again when every part of you has already given what it thought was everything. Ask yourself honestly, are your thoughts building your destiny, or are they stealing it one compromised hour at a time? Because most people live their entire lives thinking like victims. They repeat the opinions of others as if those opinions were facts. They dwell in fear. They spend more mental energy worrying about what might go wrong than they invest in deciding what they will make right. That is not thinking. That is surrender wearing the mask of practicality. Real thinking is rare. Real thinking is rigorous. Real thinking actually hurts because it demands that you look directly at your excuses, that you identify them, name them, and then burn them completely. It demands that you challenge every assumption you have been carrying about what you are capable of, and then ask the only question that matters. What do I actually want, and how do I make it non-negotiable? That is the first step. Clarity. You must know exactly what you want, with a specificity that most people are afraid to commit to, because committing with that precision means there is no longer a comfortable excuse if you fall short. The man who achieves the impossible does not pursue a vague aspiration. He knows the exact outcome he is building toward. He has it so clearly defined in his mind that it becomes more real to him than the obstacles in his path. This is what Napoleon Hill called definiteness of purpose, and what I simply called knowing exactly what you are going for. It is the absolute cornerstone of every great achievement ever created. Without it, your energy scatters, your focus weakens, your actions become inconsistent, and inconsistency is the silent killer of potential. But with that clarity, you become something different entirely. You become a force that cannot be redirected by circumstance, because your direction is set at a level deeper than circumstance can reach. The second principle of impossible achievement is applied faith, not the passive variety, not faith as a comfort in difficult moments, faith as an active behavior-driving force, faith that says, I do not have the evidence in front of me yet, but I will conduct myself as though the outcome is already secured. You must develop the discipline of behaving in advance of the result. Think the way the man thinks who already commands the room. Move the way the man moves who already knows success is not a question of whether but of when. This is not delusion. This is the most practical thing I can teach you. The universe does not respond to longing. It does not respond to wishing or hoping or wanting. It responds to builders, to men and women who act in complete congruence with the belief they carry. And the world will test that belief. Make no mistake about that. You will be mocked. You will be doubted by people whose opinion should mean nothing to you. You will be misunderstood by people who are operating at a completely different frequency. But none of that is a signal that you are wrong. It is a sign that you are ahead. The impossible is only impossible until someone refuses to accept that designation. Every great invention, every tower, every institution, every record that once seemed untouchable, all of it lived first, and only in the mind of someone bold enough to believe it could exist. So stop asking whether your goal is realistic. Ask whether you are disciplined enough to make it real. Those are entirely different questions with entirely different answers. The third principle is auto-suggestion, and I want you to hear this with the seriousness it deserves. You must begin to speak to yourself with the voice of certainty, not once, not when the mood is right, relentlessly, until the words you say to yourself about yourself are no longer something you have to consciously choose, but have become the automatic language of your identity. What you repeat, you begin to believe. What you believe, you begin to create. This is not motivational language. This is neuroscience. This is the architecture of high performance. You must affirm your vision daily, speak it with emotion, with conviction, with the same intensity I brought to the fourth quarter of a 7-game series, and burn it into your subconscious until it becomes the operating system your behavior runs on. Because your subconscious mind does not argue, it does not evaluate, it accepts what you repeatedly and emotionally tell it. If you constantly speak limitation to yourself, your subconscious will organize your behavior around that limitation and deliver you a limited life with mathematical precision. But if you declare power, potential, and precision, if you speak to yourself like a man who already inhabits his highest version, your subconscious will begin to bend your reality accordingly. You must become genuinely intoxicated with your vision, obsessed with it in a way that other people cannot fully understand from the outside, willing to build it in silence, in solitude, in sacrifice, while others sleep, while others doubt, while others settle and call it wisdom. You must develop an immunity to the noise of the world, because the world will never stop saying, stay safe, be realistic, do not aim so high, who do you think you are? But hear me clearly. Realism is the language of the defeated. No man who ever changed the shape of anything did it by being realistic. He did it by seeing something others could not yet see and refusing to unsee it no matter the cost. That is thinking operating at its highest frequency. That is the mind of the man who achieves what others write off before they even attempt. But let me be direct with you. because I was always direct. This will not be comfortable. You will be tempted to quit in the moments when quitting would be the easiest and most understandable choice you have ever made. You will be pulled back toward comfort by forces that feel completely rational in the moment. You will be told by people who care about you that you are being foolish. And none of that matters if your purpose is clear, your faith is active, and your repetition is relentless. Because then your results are no longer governed by opinion or emotion or the moods of people around you. They are governed by law, the law of cause and effect, the law of mind and matter. And when you understand those laws and operate by them consciously, you realize that the impossible was never actually impossible. It was simply unfamiliar. And the moment you trained your mind to operate at the right frequency, it became yours by right. There is no power on this earth greater than a fully made up mind. Once a man has genuinely decided to achieve the impossible, not hoped for it, not talked about it, not put it on a vision board, and revisited it when the emotion was high, but truly decided with finality, nothing can stop him. Because his thinking becomes sovereign. His commitment becomes the organizing principle of every hour. His results become not a matter of luck, but a natural and predictable consequence of his mental and behavioral alignment. This is why I say it again, because it needs to be heard more than once. If you would achieve the impossible, you must decide with total finality. No backup plan designed to catch you if the primary vision fails. No exit identity waiting in the wings. No comfortable retreat already mapped out in the back of your mind. Burn the bridges, close the door behind you. Stand face to face with your highest potential and remain there until it yields. Most people fail because they quietly, without even admitting it to themselves, leave a way out. They prepare to retreat even as they move forward. But the mind that is prepared to retreat will always hesitate when pressure arrives. And hesitation is what kills potential faster and more completely than failure ever will. If you are going to think with real power, your thoughts must be fully committed. Not partially, not strategically hedged. Fully. Your vision must not be a part-time occupation. Your standards must not bend when circumstances change. You must walk like a man who has already become what others doubt, and that is not arrogance. That is alignment. And from that alignment, you develop something that I consider more valuable than any physical gift: mental endurance. The power to remain locked in day after day, week after week, month after month, without the need for external validation to keep you moving. The capacity to stay obsessed when no one acknowledges your effort, to continue when fatigue has become your constant companion, to execute with precision when the situation feels profoundly unfair, because the impossible is not achieved in a single victory or a single defining moment. It is earned in thousands of repetitions that the world will never see. It is earned in the early hours when everyone else is still asleep and you are already building, not just physically, but mentally. Training your mind to be deaf to noise, immune to fear, committed to forward movement even when logic is presenting a very reasonable case for stopping. Control of attention is the ultimate currency of power. In a world engineered to distract you, your environment is specifically designed to scatter your energy and fracture your focus. Every advertisement, every notification, every opinion is pulling at your attention, attempting to redirect the very resource that your success depends on. But the man who learns to govern his attention becomes genuinely invincible. Because when your attention is controlled with precision, your reality is shaped with precision. What you dwell upon expands. What you obsess over in a disciplined and directed way eventually materializes. If you give consistent attention to doubt, you are constructing a prison around yourself brick by brick. If you give consistent attention to fear, you attract more of it with reliable consistency. But if you give the full force of your sustained attention to your vision, to your mission, to the specific plan you have built to make it real, every resource inside you will begin to organize around its achievement. That is not philosophy. That is law. The law of concentration states that whatever you hold in your mind with sufficient energy and sufficient repetition must eventually appear in your physical reality. So ask yourself with total honesty what you are holding in your mind right now. Is it a clear, defined, emotionally charged image of the future you are demanding? Or is it a scattered collection of worries and uncertainties and other people's limitations that you have adopted as your own? Be ruthless in your answer, because your thinking is creating your life, whether you are doing it intentionally or entirely by default. And there is no neutral thought. Every thought you think is a vote cast for the man you are becoming or the man you are failing to become. So choose. Choose with conviction and without apology. Choose to become so precise and so intentional with your mental activity that your results become predictable to you even when they look miraculous to everyone else. This leads directly into the principle of specialized knowledge. Understand this. General knowledge is everywhere. It fills books, classrooms, and conversations. But specialized knowledge, applied knowledge, the exact understanding of the precise craft or domain you are attempting to master, that is what builds something lasting. The man who achieves the impossible becomes a dedicated student of the exact thing he has decided to master. He does not read for entertainment, he reads for evolution. He studies his craft the way a surgeon studies the human body, with obsession, with precision, with a sense of urgency that comes from knowing that his command of this knowledge is directly connected to the magnitude of what he can build. Because knowledge applied with discipline and purpose becomes power, but knowledge without application is nothing. It is the most common form of self-deception available. Millions of people know what they should do. The rare ones actually do it. So study with focus and then act immediately and consistently, because action, especially action taken in the direct presence of fear, is what builds momentum. And momentum is the invisible engine behind every result that looks like overnight success from the outside. Behind every seemingly sudden achievement is a person who was moving every single day without exception, especially on the days when nothing appeared to be happening, especially on those days, because those are the days that actually decide everything. The universe does not reward intention. I need you to understand that completely. It rewards execution. You do not receive what you want. You receive what you prepare for with relentless consistency. What are you preparing for? Is it a life that reflects your actual potential, or one that reflects the ceiling your excuses quietly built above you? Because thought creates emotion, emotion drives behavior, and behavior compounded over time forms your entire future. This is why I urge you to guard your thoughts with the same intensity that you would protect anything of irreplaceable value. Sharpen them deliberately. Align them like a precision instrument aimed at a specific target. Because once your thinking is right, once it is truly organized and directed and burning with the emotion of genuine commitment, your life cannot help but follow in that direction. But it requires that you move before the mood arrives. The man who achieves the impossible does not wait to feel ready, because ready is a feeling and feelings are unreliable. He acts in the presence of uncertainty. He builds certainty through the accumulation of his own repeated action. He understands that his results are not tied to how he feels on a given morning, but to what he practices regardless of how he feels on any morning. This is the real secret. To think with power is to take absolute and complete ownership over your inputs, your focus, and the narrative you tell yourself about yourself and your possibilities. It is to declare, I am not a product of my circumstances. I am the architect of my outcomes. And I will build something that defies what they said was possible. But even with all of that, even with the clarity and the faith and the repetition and the knowledge and the controlled attention, you will be tested in ways that will make you question everything. The impossible does not bow to casual commitment. It does not yield to part-time belief. You will hit walls that feel final. You will have moments of genuine doubt about whether you were foolish for believing this was possible in the first place. And in those moments, you have to remember that nothing of real permanence was ever built without resistance. The pressure you feel is not evidence that you chose the wrong path. It is proof that you are in the process of building something real. Pressure, properly understood and properly channeled, is what transforms the raw material of potential into something extraordinary. Keep thinking. Think with clarity. Think with intensity. Think and then act, because thinking without action is fantasy. And when your thinking becomes truly congruent, when your thoughts and your beliefs and your habits and your identity are all moving in the same direction with the same force, you become something rare in this world. You become the kind of person who commands attention simply by entering a space. You walk differently because your thoughts are no longer random. They are weapons trained on a specific target. You have built a mind that sees what others cannot, that acts when others hesitate, that believes when others have already folded and walked away. That is what makes you genuinely formidable. Not your background, not your credentials, not where you started, your thinking. Your thinking is your future. Master it, obsess over it, refine it daily, because once you do, what the world labeled impossible will begin to look inevitable. And then, when the results appear, people will say they cannot understand how you did it, and you will know exactly how. You will know it was not luck, it was not talent alone, it was the decision you made to think differently, to think deliberately, to think with a power so focused and so sustained that reality had no choice but to rearrange itself around what you were building. Every person is born with the capacity to think, but only the rare few ever learn to think with intention, with mastery, with a focused power that bends circumstance in their favor. And those few, those individuals who decide to become the architects of their own reality rather than the spectators of someone else's, They are the ones who do what the rest of the world writes off as impossible. Because the impossible is never ultimately about the world. It is about you, about your beliefs, about your standards, about the thoughts you rehearse and refine and reinforce until they take on a life of their own and begin to build without you having to force them. The man who achieves the impossible is not superhuman. He has simply reprogrammed his mental architecture to reject anything beneath his highest potential as completely unacceptable. He has understood the final truth that governs all of this. The thought that dominates your mind becomes the condition that dominates your life. So ask yourself one more time, what dominates yours? Is it fear or is it focus? Is it vague hope or is it the certainty that comes from commitment? Is it imagination married to action or is it fantasy dressed up as procrastination? Because if you are not actively, deliberately, daily programming your own mind, then the world is doing it for you. The culture is doing it. Mediocrity is doing it. The low standards of the environment around you are quietly doing it every single day. And if you think like the masses, you will live like the masses. The impossible stays impossible for most people, not because they lack the capacity to achieve it, but because they were never willing to think in a way that was completely their own. While the world demanded they fit in, the man who achieves the impossible chose to stand apart. You must be willing to think alone, to think in direct contradiction to what you were taught, when what you were taught is not serving the vision you carry, to build new beliefs through new behavior, because you cannot think at a high level while consistently acting at a low one. The gap between those two things will destroy you. Stop trying to acquire the life you want. Become the man who commands it. Become the man who invests every hour, every word, every decision into his own becoming. The man who wakes with direction because he went to sleep with direction. The man who moves with design because he has thought through the design. The man who creates with urgency because he understands that time is not something to manage casually, but something to master absolutely. And to master time, you must master thought first. Because the man who cannot govern his thinking will always be governed by his circumstances. But the man who has made his mind sovereign, that man governs worlds. He understands the bridge between thought and reality, not as a concept, but as a daily practice. He knows the mind does not obey a suggestion delivered once. It obeys repetition delivered with emotion. So he speaks his vision not once. He speaks it until his subconscious accepts it as fact and begins organizing every behavior around its achievement. He rehearses his future in his imagination with such clarity and such consistency that it becomes a working blueprint. And then he builds it, not in fantasy, not in theory, in real time with real tools, with discipline and precision and the kind of persistence that does not require the right mood because it has transcended mood entirely. The only difference between a wish and a result is execution. And execution is a mental discipline that exists long before it ever becomes a physical one. That is what separates the man who builds something real from the man who only ever dreamed about it. Dreamers ask what if. Builders ask what must I become for this to be inevitable. And once they have identified the man they must become, they become him, not instantly. Through habit, through repetition, through the daily and relentless conditioning of identity until the person they once aspired to be is simply who they are. Because your results will never consistently exceed your self-image. Your self-image is nothing more than the accumulated echo of your dominant thoughts. So if you want results that look impossible from the outside, you must first construct an internal image of yourself that makes those results the only logical outcome. Not through luck, through law, because you will always behave in a manner consistent with the person you believe yourself to be. Change the belief and you change the behavior. Change the behavior and you change the outcome, and when the outcomes begin to compound, the impossible stops feeling like a distant peak. It becomes your new baseline. It becomes the floor you stand on as you look toward the next level. But you must protect that identity. You must defend it like it is the most valuable thing you own, because it is. The world will attempt to pull you back. There will always be voices, environments, and influences designed to invite you to return to a smaller version of yourself. Do not go. You have worked too hard to think your way to this level, to surrender it to comfort or consensus. Hold the standard, keep the vision burning, and keep moving forward, because that is the only direction that matters.